So continuing on with uses of derivatives, we've seen that we can use derivatives to approximate complicated functions. Now we can use derivatives to help us draw complicated graphs. So let's just take a simple graph for the time being. When given this graph here, when given this function here, we can differentiate it to give us this here. So the red line here is our original graph. Okay, is our original function. The blue line here is our derivative. So when given a complicated function like this, differentiate it, it will give you this. Okay, so looking at by looking at f prime, by looking at the derivative, when this thing here equals 0, that's this bit here. When it equals 0, so when f prime equals 0, looking at the red line, there's a turning point. You see, by looking at f prime, it gives us some sort of information about the original function. So looking at when f prime equals 0, here's another 0 here. Then that tells us some sort of information about the original function. That in this case, it happens to be a turning point here. So looking at the derivative, when it equals 0, the original function, it will give us some information about the original function, meaning that there's a turning point here. So when it's 0 here, it gives us some information about the original function. There's a turning point here. Okay, so keep an eye out on f prime being 0. So when f prime equals 0, we said that at x0 here, x0 is a critical point. Now we can't use, in this case, it's a turning point, but we can't use, in our case here, when it equals 0 here, the original function is a turning point. And here the original function is a turning point. But we cannot say that it's a turning point. We have to use it's a critical point because when there's a case when you have a function looking like this. Hang on. Okay, so this is our f of x here, and then if you look at the derivative here, would be 0. But then even though the derivative here is 0, the original function is not really a turning point. You can see it's not a turning point. It's doing this. Here it happens to be a turning point because it turns from here. It turns around. From here it turns around. But it's possible to have a graph where it's like this. Okay, and then the f prime here would be 0. But then in this case it's not a turning point. So we cannot use the word we cannot say it's a turning point. We have to use we have to call it a critical point. Just think of a critical point as being a point that is of interest. So but we cannot. It's a point. Think of this as being a point of interest. It's a point that there's something going on there that you need to investigate. We cannot say it's a turning point because it won't always be a turning point. Okay, so bear that in mind.